Awesome. So like I said, my name is Demian Borba. I work in San Francisco for a company called Braintree, which is owned by PayPal, and we make payments easy. So with very little work, you can get pretty much any kind of payment, even Bitcoin or Apple Pay or Android Pay. And this talk here is really to show you a lot of things, plus that in the end. So I hope you guys learned something new. First lie here is that this is not about PhoneGap. This is about Cordova. And for the who here knows the story about Cordova and PhoneGap? Not everyone. Who knows PhoneGap or heard of PhoneGap? How many? Just to make it more targeted to you guys, who here is a web developer? Knows HTML. So this talk is for you. Awesome. So the way it works is Cordova is the core of everything. So it's the open source library that we have out there, and a lot of companies contribute to it. For example, Microsoft, Adobe, all these different companies, they contribute to it. And once they have a defined thing here, they have this, their own distributions of it. For example, PhoneGap is the Cordova distribution from Adobe. So it has a lot of new services on top of Cordova. For example, PhoneGap Build, PhoneGap Enterprise, that just help to accelerate your process on developing there. And for example, LG has one distribution for refrigerators, which is pretty cool as well. So Cordova is the open source core of everything. And here we're going to cover Cordova. And by covering Cordova, you can understand everything. So it's better to learn Cordova. Just very briefly about me, I used to teach this course, 20 hours in PhoneGap and Cordova, lots of examples, taught hundreds and hundreds of developers of it. So if you're interested, you can go to phonegapbootcamp.io, and it's an awesome program. My goal here is really you already have your toolbox or your knowledge. So my goal here is to give you more tools so you can improve your toolbox, and hopefully by the end of this talk, you have a better toolbox without suffering everything that I had to suffer and other people had to suffer to get there. All right, and it's divided in 4 chapters. The first one, mobile commerce, then we're going to talk about Cordova, powerful libraries, and we're going to end with how to implement payments in your applications with Angular and regular ways with server-side rendering, whatever you want to use. All right, so chapter 1, mobile commerce. Last year alone, in mobile commerce, there was generated $31.6 billion in revenue, but that was only 11% of the total digital commerce, which is a very small number, which means mobile is not that big. It was not that big yet last year. And there's a very good study of it, so you can see the link up there. I'll put these slides on my slide share so you can get everything that's here if you want to see this study, which is pretty cool. And for the first quarter of this year, just those 3 months, 11.1 billion in mobile commerce, and it's already increasing compared to the digital commerce, so 15%. So it is growing, but it's still small. And there's another very interesting finding there in that study. Nowadays, they discovered that when people need to buy something, when they do the research, they spend more time on mobile now than on desktop, researching for things. I want to buy this, I want to learn about this product. But what is interesting is that only 15% finish the transaction on mobile devices. So something is really, really wrong there, right? There's a big gap, and in my opinion, there's a big opportunity. So if we can understand how to get there, how to fill that gap, we can make our products more interesting, and people will use the mobile phones and tablets to finish transactions. And then in the same study, they cover the main reasons. The first one is people don't feel secure. They don't feel safe like buying there. But on top of that, pretty much everything else is related to UX. Maybe it's too small to read. Maybe the navigation is weird. People don't feel comfortable with that environment. And there's a lot of things we can do to make it simple and make it effective. So in this talk, for this case, we're going to create an Angular app, but this could be any app using web technologies on top of Cordova. Cordova, like we briefly discussed in the beginning, it is just a wrapper of web content. So once we generate an app with Cordova, what we get is a native web view. So for example, if I'm using Cordova to develop an app for iOS, what I get there is a native iOS app that only contains one web view, a native web view. And that web view is smart enough to communicate with native code via plugin. So I can access the accelerometer, camera, everything. And it's the same thing for Android or for BlackBerry, for Windows Phone. It's just a smart web view. And we can place, in that web view, we can place web content, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and do amazing things. And now browsers got so good that with these web views, the user doesn't know it's not native. It got to that point, and it's getting better and better and better. And the biggest advantage here is that you can develop your code once, and with very little effort, you can publish to different platforms. Or you can go crazy, and if you have a lot of money, you can hire a very good native developer for iOS, another one for Android. But then, even then, the UI will not be consistent, different things, so many small things that can be different. So I consider going this flow very, very smart. And if you do it right, you get amazing results. All right, so now the fun part, getting started with Cordova. So every time we go to talks, like Ionic talks or PhoneGap, everyone tells it's beautiful. And this is based on a true story. This is my story. I suffered so much to get, to understand everything, to make everything work. And I think a lot of people went through the same problems over and over and over. So this is based on a true story. The story that Cordova has that we mentioned is we have Cordova, our packager, and then we can use our JS files, our CSS, our HTML, the same local files we have. Then through Cordova, we can get apps. And as of now, we can do iOS, Android, Amazon Fire OS, BlackBerry, Firefox OS, Ubuntu Tizen, Windows, and Windows Phone. Windows, there is the computer. So you can have apps for the computer, for Windows, using Cordova with your web content. And the crazy thing is, you go to these talks and everyone tells you it's beautiful. It works, it's just Cordova, add platform, Cordova, run, everything works. And then you get excited. And it happened to me years ago when I saw this for the first time. And I felt really, really excited. And then you decide to join this party, right? It looks like so much fun. You want to, as a web developer, new to mobile, you want to join this party. And then you start, and it's not that it's not that pleasant. I mean, you get there, but it's not smooth. It's not a smooth ride. You hit so many bumps along the way. Yeah. I mean, you get there, but it's like, oh my God, it's not working, and fix. And then once you have your thing working, you don't want anyone touching your computer because it's fragile. You don't want to go through that hell again. And I think the world deserves a talk. That's why I did this talk, to go through those steps so you don't have to suffer everything that pretty much everyone who's new to this suffers. All right, so what I did back in San Francisco, I got two computers, a MacBook Air and a Mac and a Windows. Not like the best computers ever, and I got it, like everything was super fresh, and I went through the process, and I was documenting all the frustrations that I had along the way. So the internet was not a problem, everything was fine. I used Ethernet just to make sure it was safe. And Windows, how many Windows developers here? Oh my God, you guys are brave. Seriously, developing on Windows is really something. For example, this is 5 minutes just to boot up. I don't know if it was something with a corporate computer or something, but this is real. It took me 5 minutes to see the start button. And I heard amazing things about Windows 10, so hopefully that's changing. I'm really interested in taking a look at it. OK, I was going to say that I have a friend who also teaches that course with me, and he says like developing Windows is like living la vida loca, because you have so many extra things that happen along the way that make it hard. Seriously, like teaching the students there, like they come up with these weird things that don't make any sense along the way. All right, so how do we start? If you want to start for real, this is for real. This is the real process. And again, you have the slides on my, I'll publish in the end on my GitHub. You can get it there as well. First thing, you go to cordova.apache.org. Then you hit download. You go all the way to the end. And then you get recommended that instead of using the source code, you can download the source code and be brave and drag files here and there. But there's a CLI that you can use for Cordova to help you manage all these things. So you install the CLI. That makes everything super easy. And the first thing you do is, once you get to this page to install the CLI, make sure you look at the top right. First tip here, because sometimes you're looking for some sample from Cordova, and then you search on Google, and it gives you, OK, this is how you use the camera plugin. And then you start typing, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then you look to the top, it's a very old version of Cordova, and then you want to kill yourself. And it happened to me so many times, seriously. So that's the first tip. And then we need Node.js for the CLI, and Git, because the CLI needs to pull things from GitHub and different places. Then you install Node. Then on the Mac, you just download the package, and then you follow the steps, and you get it right. So by finishing the process, you go to your terminal. So you open your terminal on the Mac, command space terminal, or iterm. I use iterm. And then you can type node. And then if you get that to the second line, it means everything is installed and everything works. And it should work. On Mac, everything, for that kind of thing, everything works super easy. And then you can do npm version just to see npm. And npm is a node package manager. So we can download a lot of different packages to make our life easy. And that's npm. That's part of Node. And then you go on Windows. And it's not super great, because you go through the same process. It tells you it's going to install there on the same place, blah, blah, blah. And then you go to prompt. You go to start and type cmd, enter. And then you type node, and then you get an error. And it doesn't make any sense, because it told you it was going to add to the path, so node would be recognized. Even if you close and open this happened to me. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't on Windows. I don't know about Windows 10 yet. And then to double check, I went back and I went there to the computer, my computer, advanced system settings, just to check the path if node was added really there. And then you open one window, and then you open another window for environment variables, and then another window here. You can see the path, and then you go all the way to the end. So be very careful with this, because if you change this, you can ruin your computer. So my recommendation is copy this to Notepad, make sure it's there, and then go back. So what I did there, but I saw Node.js in the end. It was there. And then I re-added, and I hit OK, and everything worked. And I didn't do anything special. It was super weird. That was me that day. It's like, it didn't make any sense, because it was there. I just re-added, and it started to work. Next thing you do is Git. You need to install Git. So you can go to git.scm.com to download Git. Or if you can use Brew if you want on the Mac to make it faster. Download, install, go through all the steps. This is Windows. Again, everything is super smooth with Windows for Git. And the Mac, you go through the process. But then on the Mac, when you try to check, you go to your terminal and you type Git, it tries to use Mac Git. So Apple has a version of Git that it needs to be installed locally, but we don't want that version. We want the latest version. How do we change that? You can use Brew on a Mac, or you can add you can finish the steps of installing Git and then add that to your path. Just like we did in Windows, we're going to do it here. So on the Mac, to add things to your path, you just go to your root folder, create a file, a hidden file called .bash profile. Then you open that file in any text editor. In that case, I used Vim. And then you just add the path where the bin files are for Git. Then you reload with source.bash profile, and then you type Git. And then that's your version of Git, not the Mac version of Git, which is cool. Then you need to install Cordova. We're going to use npm, the node package manager, to install Cordova globally. That's why you have the -G there. So anywhere in my computer, I can type Cordova, and it finds that. If I don't do the G, it does it locally only. And it's the same thing for Windows and Mac. On Windows, you just install npm, install -G Cordova, everything works. On the Mac, on the other hand, it gives you that error because npm doesn't have permission. Your user doesn't have permission to add things to a specific file where all the packages are. And some people go there and use sudo for everything. How many people use sudo for Mac? Cool. You can do that if you want. It's OK. But I don't like doing that. I want to just type npm install Cordova -G and have things working. And to fix that and be happy, not crazy, it's very easy. You just have to, this is the folder that needs to change. The permissions have to change. You need to change the ownership of that folder from the super user to your user. So you just go to your terminal and type sudo change ownership, change owner recursively, and then you type your username, your Mac username. In my case, was dborba or Braintree, and then which folder you want to change. That's it. So after that, you don't have to keep doing sudo for everything, which is super simple. But be careful. Don't change too much to other folders. One day, I'm new to Ruby, so I was playing with Ruby, and I said it was trying to install something different in a different file. I changed the ownership there. It almost lost my computer. So you can change that, but don't change others. And then you go there, redo the process, and then you can install things globally without sudo, and everything works. And there's a link up there with the step-by-step directions on how to get sudo out of the question. OK, so now how things work, right? So now that everything's configured, I can create Cordova apps for Windows and for the Mac. And it's super simple. You just do Cordova Create on your terminal, on your prompt, and then space app folder. This is the name of the folder that's going to be created somewhere in your system. It's a folder that doesn't exist yet. So that's why you have to be something. And then space your ID. People tend to use reverse domain for that for the convention. So you can use the opposite. So IO Demian, that's my website. And then .my app, the name of my app, which is app. And then the app name. App name is the name that shows up below the icon on the OS. Once you do that, it's going to create that folder. Then you enter that folder and you type Cordova platform add. And you can add iOS, Android, Windows, whatever you want. And it's super, super, super simple. So let's do that for you to see that I'm not lying very quickly. I'll go to my desktop, just play safe. Can you see it? Well, let me do this then. Is it better? Cool, let me just. All right, so let's start things here. So first of all, I'm on my desktop. I can do Cordova, create, and then anything I want. So for example, my folder or my app folder, whatever you want. Your reverse domain. You cannot have numbers and version here because version is a separate thing. This is just an ID. And then your app name. In this case, I'll do like code on the beach. Cool, so now I have a Cordova project created. And I can see, I have a lot of things here, but you can see I have the folder created, my folder. Can you see it here? Cool. Now I can jump to that folder and I can add platforms. So let's say I want to add iOS and Android. Cordova platform, add iOS, Android. Or I can do one, then the other. And NPM is smart enough to cache this thing. So I did it before. That's why it was super fast. So you don't have to keep doing it over and over. So that's it. Once things are installed here, you can install plugins, for example, camera, all these different things. But if you want to test on the device, after everything is configured, because I'll save this for later. So this is how you get your project structured. Just one more thing before I finish here and move forward. This is what gets created. So you have a config.xml file that describes your application, the name and everything. So if I need, for example, spaces in my app name, that's where I add it after creating the app, right here. I can add descriptions, all the plugins that I need. They're not here yet, but they show up here. And then I have a www folder where I place all my files, my HTMLs, my JS files, my CSS files, all my local files. This is where I work from. So I work on these guys here. I change things here and everything. And then when I add platforms, just like I did, he adds these two folders here. In iOS, it gives, remember I said in the beginning that the iOS Cordova project, it's just a native app with a web view. That's what it is. So this is an Xcode project. If I open this in Xcode, I can run things, I can do everything. But if you look inside, it's just a web view, a smart web view. And this is an Android project. And you can import to Android Studio, for example, and keep going there. But if you want, you don't have to open those guys. You can do everything from the command line. And that's what we're trying to do moving forward. Like building, generating the final files, and everything. Questions so far? No? All right. And then just to review here, with the command line interface, you can do very cool stuff for iOS. But the only restriction that if you want to do apps using Cordova for the Mac, you have to have a Mac. You cannot use Windows, unfortunately. You can if you use, like, for example, PhoneGap build, where you work everything locally and then you upload to the cloud and they build it for you. But if you want to do everything working pretty and everything, you have to have a Mac. And then you can do Amazon Fire, like we saw, Windows, Windows Phone, Firefox OS, and so forth. All right, so now let's see how we can get things done for Android, how we can configure Android. Because if I try to do, my computer is already configured, but if I just did what I showed you and I try to build Android apps, it's going to give me an error saying that the SDK is not installed, there's nothing there. So how can we configure the SDK for Android? And it's very, very simple. It got a lot simpler. In the past, it required a lot more things to be done. So first of all, you download the JDK, and this is all on the website that it's super easy to find. Then you download and install Android Studio, and you have to add, after everything is installed, you have these two folders that need to be added to your path, so your terminal knows where to find information. So you need to add tools and platform tools, and just make sure that this current version of Cordova needs the API 22 and build tools 19 or plus. Because Android keeps improving, so just make sure, and same thing with Cordova. Every time they release new versions of Cordova, just make sure you're in sync with that. Just read the documentation. It's super simple to know, and then you download the right one. So how to get the JDK? Just go to that link, 7 or plus for the Mac or for Windows. You can download and install that. Then same thing for Android Studio. And you add to the path. The path is our, remember the bash profile that we created? Same thing. Just add those things. I already have the Git, as I showed you in the beginning. Now I added two more. I added tools and platform tools. And they are there. Just look on your library. It's a hidden library on the Mac. So just Android SDK and add these two paths. So your terminal knows where to find things. Cordova can get those things. On Windows, same thing, platforms and platform tools. The tricky thing on Windows is that it's a hidden folder. So you have to type you can see the slides later, but you have to type app data, local, Android, and then you see everything and you can install things. Then after that, you can start using Android. Just plug your device, hit Cordova build or Cordova run Android, and it's going to, if you do Cordova run Android, it's going to compile, build, and put it on your device. Super simple. So how do you do the build? Like I said, let's see if I have time here. I have an Android phone here that I can show you. How many Android users here? Cool. So you don't have to do anything special. I'm just going to connect this to my Android device via USB. And we can do 3 things here. After we build everything, after we finish our project, we can do Cordova build Android. And then it's going to build the APK for us. Cordova run Android, it's going to generate the APK and push it to the device. And we can also debug it in Chrome. So let me see here. And just one thing that's very, very important. Once you change your stuff here, you can see that in your platforms folder, you also have a www. So Cordova gets everything that's here and places it inside these guys. So don't change things here, because if you do change there, next time you do Cordova run, it's going to overwrite everything you did. So work always on this guy here. OK, my Android is working. Now that I have that, I can go back to my code and do Cordova run Android. Because now my computer is configured, it's going to use that www, place everything on the iOS and Android folder, and we'll put it here on the device. Takes a while, but yeah, build successful. There you go. I have the app running here. Super, super simple. And it's a native app. It's showing web content, but it's all local and the user doesn't know. And one thing that I showed you there is that you can debug. So if you go to Chrome and you do Chrome inspect, it shows all the web views that are open in this device. So even websites, if I open Chrome here and open this tab, I can see things. So one thing that's cool here is, just like you inspect websites, if you interact with things here, things will move here. Let's try to change one thing here to prove that I'm not lying. So if I change body script div, for example, Apache Cordova, let's do code on the beach. And you see things change here as well. It's the same thing. So you can debug, you can see the scripts. Everything that you have access in Chrome DevTools, you have access here. So it's super powerful to use. Cool. So that's how you debug. Oh, another thing you can do, you can use console here. You can say alert, hello. And then it shows up here, hello. Anything you can do there. Cool. Any questions on Android? Now, web developers, you guys can consider yourselves mobile developers, right? If you go this path. Cool. How about iOS? What can we do with iOS? First, you have to have a Mac, like we discussed before. Then you need Xcode. You need Xcode and command line tools that are necessary. To get there, you just run, first of all, you run Xcode select install. So it's going to install all command line tools for you. Super simple. It's going to open the installer and everything after you type there. And then you need 2 NPM packages. You need the iOS sim to test things on the simulator without having to open Xcode, and iOS deploy to target the device itself directly. So if I need to type to target the simulator, I do iOS sim. If I need to target the device, I do iOS deploy. And they are all packaged inside Cordova, so I can just Cordova build iOS, just like I did with Android. If I need to run my app on the simulator, Cordova run iOS simulator. Let's do that so I can show you. Same app, I mean same folder, same thing that had Android and iOS. I can do Cordova run iOS, and I want to do this on the simulator. So it's using iOS sim, and he opens it here. If I do iOS run, Cordova run iOS device, it's going to target my device. Building, it's here on my device. And how I can debug things here. Instead of Chrome, I have to go to Safari. And then it doesn't show this develop menu item at first, so you got to go to preferences and enable that. But then once you have it here, you have the simulator. That's this guy here. Where's my simulator? This one here. So let me put this. You see the simulator? That's the index.html that's there. And if I use the other one, it's this guy here. So just like I did with Chrome, I can do it here for iOS devices. Cool. On Safari. All right, now that we have everything installed, now I can tell you, you're ready to start developing things, right? Now you went through all the pain points, and I'm telling you, it's not that painful when you know all the steps and all the hurdles you can find. All right, chapter 3. How are we doing with time? Very good. Chapter 3. Now, what can help us in terms of libraries or frameworks? Because it's a web view, right? It's empty. We need to write a website to run here, a local website to run here. And what are good things that can be used? The first library framework that I recommend is Ionic. How many people heard of Ionic? It's really, really cool, and it's getting better and better. Every day they're releasing something new. It focuses a lot on pixel perfect. And the great thing about Ionic, it runs on top of Cordova. So you don't have to do all the things that we did here. You have to configure your computer just like we did. But instead of using Cordova run, blah, 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 you set your computer for Cordova just like we did. And then you go to NPM and you do npm install ionic-g. And then use Ionic to do everything for you. So you do Ionic run. There's another one called, I don't know if you guys heard of or tried, but every time you have to change the icon of your app, there's like tons and tons of different files you have to change. Generate lots and lots of different PNGs, and it's super painful. And Ionic has one thing called resources. You just type, there's one, once you start using Ionic, you go to a specific folder, and there's the PNG there, like a root PNG, just one. And then you type on command line Ionic resources, and it's going to generate everything for you, all the icons for you automatically. So you just based on in one file, so you don't have to do that manually. That by itself saves a lot of time. It has live reload. So for example, anytime I save my file, I'm working on my index.html or my JS file, save, it's going to reload the app on my device, so I don't have to keep rebuilding stuff all the time, which is super cool. There's this thing called Ionic Lab, where you have the same base code, and it's based on Angular as well. So you have to learn Angular before using Ionic, but it's not too tricky. It's easy once you know the basics. And with the same base code, it is smart. So you don't focus on your CSS. It's all Ionic CSS. And they worked super hard in making a CSS for iOS and a CSS for Android. For example, this is an app with a tab. And then for iOS, the tab is on the bottom. And for Android, the tab is on the top. But it's the same code. And Ionic is deciding based on your device which CSS to use, which is amazing. And they have lots and lots of components that help you along the way. Amazing services like analytics, push notifications. Everything is free for now, so make sure you use it before they start charging. There's even like ways of publishing an app to for example, Apple Store. And because it's a web view, you can send new content without being approved because it's a web view, right? So you can send new content there. And that's what they provide. So it's super cool. And the link is up there if you want to start using it. Another thing that's very powerful is Angular material. So for Angular developers, you can go to material.angularjs.org. And they have tons and tons of, let me show you, components that you can use that speed your process. For example, I can have chips, which is very cool. I can add new things. I can delete things. I have, this fab is very cool for navs. Grid list, icon, input. The input is really cool. This is one of the things I like the most. How many times you're typing something in a form and by the middle of it you don't know what is it for anymore, because is it name, is it middle name, is it email? And they use material design guidelines to help you here. So for example, let's say I want to add my first name here. As soon as I type something, I can type and the label goes to the top. Right? Same thing here. So you can type and you know what you're typing. And this is all CSS and HTML. And that works on in your Cordova app, which is super cool. And validation and list. For example, there's, let me see if I can show you this. Subheader. This is super cool. Like Instagram does this. So check what happens here. I'll make sure it's zoomed out. It's hidden here, but as soon as there's a new subheader, it's going to push it there. So it's very smooth, and this is CSS and JavaScript. And the code for that is this. So you just do a list, a directive, and then a list item with some content, and then Angular does the job for you. So just by adding these directives, these Angular directives, you get this amazing behavior. And it has a lot of things here as well. Side nav, for example, for, let's say it's a tablet app, it's going to show it this way. But if it's smaller than that, it hides it for you, based on size. So you can focus on your content instead of focusing a lot on other things. So that's Angular material. And the last piece of powerful frameworks that I like to recommend is Cordova for Angular developers. In order to use native code, for example, if I need to use the camera, I need to use specific code, for example, navigator, camera, all these things to access camera and install the plugin. Cordova wraps all that in a service, an Angular service. So it's a lot simpler for you to do things. And he also generates the code for you. So it's literally copy and paste. ngcordova.com. And he has a lot of things. Docs, plugin. So he has plugins for camera, Touch ID, OAuth. So you can use OAuth for Facebook, Twitter, it's all there, and it's super simple to use. Geolocation, indication progress, push notification. And it generates a service for you that does all that job. For example, if I need to use the camera, first I need to add the plugin, the Cordova plugin. Cordova plugin add, and then the camera plugin. And he adds it to all the platforms you have. Android, iOS, whatever you have installed. If you install a platform later, it's going to install that plugin for you as soon as the platform is installed. It's really smart. And then the only thing you got to do is use this code, and you can get, for example, as soon as my device is ready, this is a Cordova thing, I can set how my camera will behave, if it's going to save to my photo album or not, the size, type, it can be PNG, JPEG, the type, base64, and start using it. And then because it's an Angular service, you just call your service and then camera, and that's it. It gives you the code. So if you want, let's say I'm using camera and geolocation. I can go to custom build, and I'm going to use camera and geolocation. Then I can hit build, and it's going to create a JS file for me with those two services available. So one for camera and one for geolocation. And I can start using it in my Angular app. So I don't have to type everything, vibration, all these different things. And they keep adding stuff every time. All right, we're almost done here. We have 10 minutes. I'll go fast. Now the last chapter. How can we create apps accepting cards, PayPal, Bitcoin, or other forms of payment? So the payment industry, the payment world is very complex. There are lots of different pieces and parts. And on top of that, there's one thing called Pci Compliance. So you cannot save, for example, as a regular merchant, you cannot save credit card information if you're not Pci compliant. Especially if you sell a lot and you're not Pci compliant, you're going to get fined, and it's going to be very bad for you. So you have to follow a lot of rules and fill out lots of forms and add a lot of security things in your server. So it's very complex. I work for Braintree, and we have an amazing service that wraps all that, and you don't have to worry about that. So Uber uses Braintree, Airbnb uses Braintree, all these big companies, because it saves them that headache and everything. I have a sample app here. The main product we recommend for you guys is called V.0. It's super simple to use, and it gives you options to accept, like I said, Apple Pay, Android Pay on the native side, because it has to be native. But then on Cordova here, you can accept PayPal, Bitcoin, credit cards, debit cards, and all these different things. And what it is, it's just an iframe in your app. So this is going to be generated on Braintree, and it's going to be displayed for you. And because it's coming from Braintree, it's all PCI compliant. It's not you that's handling that. Everything here takes place on the server. Again, it's very complex. It creates validation for you, so you don't have to worry. As soon as you start typing your credit card, you see what type of card it is. It has a lot of validation. You still need a small piece of work on server. So in this case, I used Node, but you can use all these different things, Ruby, .NET, and so forth. And you have two ways of doing it. You can do it the regular way, server-side rendering, or you can use single-page apps like Angular, for example, to do it. The regular way is you have Braintree handling all the transactions, your server, your Node server in this case, but it could be Ruby or anything, being the middleware, handling, giving your credentials and everything, and then this Node server will render the page to the user. I'll go fast here because we don't have a lot of time. You have to, on your Node server, you have to add your credentials. It's super easy to get it once you have a sandbox account, free. Then your Node server will talk to Braintree and get a client token. And then with that token, you can send that token to the page that's going to be rendered. And by adding it here, you get that we call it drop-in, that UI with the forms and everything that's available for you. That's the regular way. Or you can use Angular, where it's not going to be rendered on the server. The only thing that the server will do is generate a token and send it to the Angular app or to your Cordova app. And then everything will take place here. The only requirement on their UI is that you have a specific div with a specific name, so Braintree knows where to place that drop-in, those tags that I framed for you. And you have to have Braintree.js. Then you add your credentials in Node. And in Node, you create two routes. The first one is to get the token. I'm going super fast, sorry guys, but I hope you get the idea. Then your Node server talks to Braintree, gets the token, and your Node server sends the token back to the client, to your Angular app. And then with that, this is how you ask on your Angular app how to get that. And then once you get that token, you can render that in the specific div you created up there. And because it's a form and it's a single page app, if you don't do anything, as soon as you hit submit, it's going to refresh the page. And we don't want that. We want it to stay single page as a single page app. So you just implement this payment method nonce received so it doesn't refresh the form. And then you can get this thing called nonce, a payment method nonce, that describes everything about the payment, like the credit card that's inputted there. It's all encrypted. The credit card information or PayPal information. And then Braintree uses that nonce to process your payment. So the drop-in gives you that nonce. So with that nonce, after the user fills out all that information, you can hit a second route in your server to process. And you just pass the amount or anything else, for example, client ID or anything, and you pass the nonce that has all the payment information from that specific user. And then the route takes that nonce and fulfills the transaction. Super simple. I have a demo here just to show it working. So I'll close this. I have my Cordova app on this side. I have my Node server here, so I can start my server npm start. This is the Angular way. I'm using nrock here just to generate a specific IP so my phone can see my computer. But in the end, it will be a real server. And then here, I can run my app, Cordova run iOS device. Or I can do simulator so you could see it. And this is all on my GitHub, so you can use the code if you want to. So it's generating the app for iOS. It's here. This is an Angular app. You got the token, and with that token, it renders our drop-in here. Then I can add my credit card information. As soon as I type, I can see it's in 41, for example, it's Visa. This is a sample number. And it has all these validations for you. So, for example, if I do something that's not valid, for example, 14, it tells me it's not valid right there. So I'll do 20. And then I can use PayPal if I want. So it opens the PayPal window to authenticate. Once I finish, I can hit Pay Now. And it's going to process. And then Braintree will give it back this big JSON here that contains everything. So the transaction went through. It was true. And it has a lot of different other things you can use. For example, if it doesn't work, it tells you what's wrong, what's missing, so you can understand or give the right feedback to the user. And if you go to your Sandbox account, if I remember mine, there it is. You can see I have those $10 here. If I buy one more time, just to show I'm not lying, I'll use PayPal this time. So PayPal, then you type your email at .com, and then your password, and then you log in. goes back to your app. Now the Angular app has that payment method nonce that describes all the PayPal information. If I hit pay now, it's the same thing. And if I refresh the page here, now I have $20. This is a sandbox, right? So I can do whatever I want. I'm not spending real money. And once it's done, I can create a production account and keep going that way. So that was everything I had for you guys. We saw all these chapters. I'll place the slides on my GitHub. I hope your developer toolbox is a little bit bigger now. And good luck with that. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you.